This is Legend of Yamashita's Treasure, a Raider novel written by J.C.Albaugh.
Chapter 9. The Fortress of the Lost Gold. Near Mount Malindang. The dawn broke to shine light over the mountain. The only sounds of the jungle were the distant birds and the slashes of the leaves and grass as Jack swung a machete through the dense vegetation. His rifle was still slung around his back, but he dropped his plate carrier to instead go with the Condor Recon chest rig. Without his helmet and armor, the trek through the dense jungle was made incredibly easier. Only his small day pack carried the necessary equipment for basic survival and cave diving. Apparently, Maria said that equipment might be needed. Maria, who was directly behind Jack, studied the GPS and the map as a navigator. The two traversed along the side of the mountain, at this point far from any civilization. Even the sun was struggling to get through the jungle's canopy and onto the forest floor. Jack took a curiosity in the evidence Maria presented the night before of a hidden relic with supernatural abilities being hidden in a jungle bunker. He grew up and fell in love with pulp adventure books, video games, and film, but always thought that they were fantasy. He was still skeptical about the whole journey that Maria invited him on, yet he wanted to see if her intense conviction would lead to something bewildering. He continued to hack away at the vines and brush, sweating in the morning Philippine sun. Maria seemed unbothered by the fact that Jack was solely putting in the physical exertion to cut through the thick vines and oppressive bushes, but it wasn't in Jack's nature to complain. He wouldn't let her do the work, and Maria didn't protest.
Hold on, Jarhead. It's supposed to be right here?
As she dropped the map to look around, they were at the side of the mountain, and the only things that they saw were the overarching trees and the steep incline that was part of the base of the mountain. Yet it was covered in emerald green moss and intersecting vines.
So, where's this bunker?
Jack skeptically asked.
Did you get something wrong?
I did not get it wrong,
Maria said with frustration. She searched intently around the area, examining every tree and bush, looking for any possible clues. Jack was disappointed, yet thought he could take the time to actually talk to Maria about his feelings for her. Maybe he could turn her disappointment into something charming.
Hey, Maria.
Jack started to talk.
Cement!
Maria cried. Jack continued to be confused.
What are you talking about?
Jack asked. She motioned for him to come over, and Jack ran up the incline to meet her. She uncovered a small portion of what could have been a large cement frame for the top of the entrance of the bunker. Her eyes widened, and she giggled. A far cry from the calm, cool, and collected personality she used to advertise. She then reached into her pack.
How the hell are we going to get in there?
Jack asked.
With this?
Maria pulled a grenade from the pack. Jack was shocked, mainly because grenades were serialized gear, and if one went missing, the contractors would be in deep trouble.
Is that ours?
Jack asked.
No, Jarhead. I got it from the market.
Maria explained. Jack was not sure about that answer.
The market?
He tested.
Yes, even I can tell you the woman that sold it to me. Just shut up and trust me.
Maria retorted. Jack's list of questions increased after that answer. She placed the grenade deep into the dirt, pulled the pin, and the pair sprinted down the hill and ducked for cover. The blast sent a shockwave through their body. But Jack was more worried about the noise it made. The contractors would no doubt be on high alert. The blast left a hole, obscured by the dust, no more than 2 feet in diameter. Using his weapon's mounted white light, Jack went to inspect the hole into the side of the mountain with Maria. They noticed it spanned around 12 feet deep into the mountain, before opening up into a larger space.
Well, here we go,
Jack said, buying into Maria's mission and getting down to crawl through the space. Jack started to get excited about what lay ahead. He also had a job to do, and right now that was protecting Maria from any danger she might get into inside the bunker. The dust turned into cobwebs inside the hole, as his large body was pressed on all sides. He felt like he might get stuck in there. The intense claustrophobia was starting to set in, yet he silenced his thoughts by closing his eyes and pressed forward until the end of the hole, with his rifle held in front of him. The large hole opened up to being at the top of the pitch-black hallway. He fell down the dirt into the pitch black to reach the floor. The force of the head-first fall made him drop his rifle. He reached for his weapon, pointing its light into the ominous darkness. As he heard the shifting of the rock and dirt behind him as Maria was crawling through the hole, he went through his bag to find a short, slender, cylindrical item. It was a chemical light. He snapped the glass inside the tube and a bright yellow glow illuminated the cavernous bunker. The wind whistled deep in the bowels of the bunker as insects crawled along the vine-laden walls. Jack had a sinking, eerie feeling, like this bunker may be his tomb. Maria's small and slender body had no problem getting through this hole. After rolling down, she dusted herself off and took her flashlight and attached it to her belt. Jack dropped a chemical light to signify where they came from, then attached one chemical light to himself and one to Maria in case of emergencies.
Hey, careful, Jarhead. Yamashita has been known for booby-trapping the caches of his treasure.
Maria recalled. Jack was skeptical that any strategic emplacement, like a bunker, would have their own traps, but he nodded in acknowledgement. Jack led the way with his rifle at the low, ready, his mounted light guiding further into the long-forgotten bunker.
My hero,
Maria said sarcastically, and then followed him. The pair cautiously made their way through the passage. Maria looked ahead for any sign of where they should go while Jack combed the ground with his light to detect any tripwire or other indications of possible booby traps.
Hold.
Jack ordered, raising his hand into a fist, which nearly hit Maria behind him. What Jack had spotted, what the unusual gathering of vines and dead leaves crowding around his section of the floor, granted, there were dead leaves and vines throughout the bunker, yet they were scattered. This grouping of vegetation seemed like somebody placed it there for a reason.
The floor could be false,
Jack said.
You sure?
Jack stared intently, looking for a way to determine if it was a trap, while Maria grabbed a rock from the decaying cement and tossed it into the vegetation. Sure enough, the plants fell apart and revealed a massive pit with barbed spikes at the bottom. The pit was too far to simply jump for either of them.
Well, shit, what do we do now?
Maria asked. Jack had an idea. The vines were dug into the walls on either side, a commodity the architects of this death bunker did not realize would overtake the walls after more than a few decades. Jack looked for a grouping of larger vines at the top of the wall and pulled them. They were connected to an anchor point, which luckily was a hole in the top of the wall centered between the pit. Jack tied his chem light to his pack and tossed it to the other side to lighten his weight and illuminate the other side of the pit. Then he swung along the sides of the wall, using his feet to run along the sides and shift away some of his weight on the vine. As he made it to the other end, he jumped to the other side and landed with a thud on the floor. Maria watched on, slightly impressed.
Okay, Jarhead, you know how to use your noggin.
Maria joked.
Alright, your turn.
Jack replied with a slight laugh of disbelief.
I got a better way.
She smiled. Maria took a few steps back to get a running start. She sprinted towards the side of the wall and leaped. Her feet were placed against the wall in a position that would generate lift for the other foot to be placed. She was wall running, a popular move in parkour. It was Jack's turn to be impressed. However, her last foot placement got caught in the vines, and she tumbled forward, hitting her chest on the edge of the pit. She fell back and tried to hold on the ledge but couldn't get a grip. Her eyes widened as she started to fall. She then felt a sharp tug on her arm. Jack had dove to grab her arm and had her dangling over the pit just 10 feet above the barbed spikes. With his strength, Jack pulled her back up.
Do that shit one more time and we are done. I will expose you of what you're doing and we are through,
Jack said with anger. He wasn't mad at her, but his protective instincts along with his personal feelings spurred an emotional response.
I'm sorry. I swear.
Maria said sheepishly. Jack dusted her off and made sure she was okay.
I'm fine. Only my ego is injured, but thank you.
Maria replied earnestly. The two continued into the bunker. The rough edges and overgrown vegetation turned into cold metal coated with cobwebs. The hallway led straight into a larger room, with desks made of decaying wood or dusty metal, and large rusty cabinets where radio operators would patch calls over the island. On the other side were two heavy metal doors.
This looks like a Japanese command center.
Jack noticed.
Yes, but the other side of the door is probably where we need to be going.
Maria insisted. They took a look at the doors. They wouldn't budge, but there wasn't any sign of a lock holding them together.
It must be electronic,
Maria guessed. The two looked around the room to find out where the button for the lock would be. Maria looked under the desk, while Jack looked curiously around the walls and eventually the radio cabinet.
Hey, Maria, any chance it could be this?
Jack called. She walked to him.
What gives it away?
Maria asked.
The fact there's a radio here, yet your team has never unearthed any signs of a radio tower around the mountain.
Jack replied. The two looked at the radio. The robust and bulky contraption had a headset plugged in with 4 dials in succession of each other. Western numerals were written in tiny print around the dials.
Could be a combination lock.
Jack suggested.
No shit, Sherlock. But what's the combination?
Maria said, annoyed that Jack could find a clue before her. The two continued to look around, searching for a possible combination of numbers. Then Maria had an idea.
Hey, Jack. Try these numbers.
Maria said, looking into her backpack for the manifest she recovered. She realized that the 4 numbers at the end of the message might not have been oddities.
Try 0819.
She read aloud. Jack turned the dials to meet the numbers, yet there was no movement from the door.
Well, damn.
Maria said in frustration. She continued to look around while Jack noticed the headset.
Maybe you have to speak into this as well?
Jack thought. He donned the headset over his ears. He thought of a passcode in Japanese.
Kudasai?
Jack tried, remembering the Japanese he picked up while in Okinawa.
What are you doing?
Maria asked.
Aita.
Jack continued.
Maybe there's a code phrase. Onegaishimasu?
It wouldn't be that simple.
She looked back at the manifest. The header said, in hiragana Japanese, Imperial Japanese Navy. Underneath was a quote, Hako Ichio, or all the world under one roof, the slogan for Imperial Japan.
Hey, Jack. Try Hako Ichiu.
Maria said, dropping the jarhead nickname. Jack caught on and did his best to pronounce it.
Hako Ichio.
The metal doors clanged open, and a sharp gust of wind blew through. Jack and Maria's lights, both electric and chemical, went dark, unable to turn back on. They were alone in the pitch-black darkness. Jack felt an eerie presence looming behind and around him, as if there were beings crowding around him, whispering into his ear to turn back.
Maria, are you okay?
Jack yelled.
Yeah, I'm right here. I'm fine. I could have sworn I put in fresh batteries.
Maria answered. Luckily for the two of them, Jack had packed one last chemical light. Jack felt Maria start to huddle behind him as she illuminated the room back up. However, Maria had moved away from him during the blackout. Jack looked around, and suddenly their electric lights came back on. The presence of other people in the abandoned room with them disappeared.
You okay, Jack?
Maria asked, as scared as he was.
Yeah, all good. Let's go.
Jack said, trying to get his bearings. The scenery of the bunker changed drastically when Jack and Maria stepped through the metal doors. Instead of the normal rustic edges of a military bunker lay a sizable cave. Sunlight was pouring through a 3-foot-wide hole through the highest part of the cave, which was around 40 feet. Water was pouring through the hole and down into the deep pit that neither Maria nor Jack could see the end of. Along the edge of the cave lay a natural walkway that led across the side of the cavern. Waiting for them on the other side of the cave looked like a door to a traditional Japanese temple, complete with a swooping, overarching roof made of tile, red wood to support the beams, and an ornate metal door with kanji inscriptions. They approached the steps of the temple carefully. Jack couldn't make it out the sensation, but felt the sharp sense of impending doom every step he got closer to the temple. He thought to himself on what was driving him to take the lead head first into an ancient and possibly dangerous temple. Sure, Maria was someone he would like to impress, but it was also the rush of adrenaline and fear that he longed for ever since he left the Marines. His curiosity also took over. He had to know why a World War II general built a temple in a cave and a bunker for war loot that was going to Tokyo before the island was recaptured by the Allies. As the two opened the doors, a single passageway lay ahead with wooden walls along the side with sleek dark wood for flooring. On the opposite end lay steel hatched door more commonly used on ships or bank vaults.
The treasure must be on the other side,
Maria announced. Jack heard rumblings coming from the walls, and before Maria could step into the hallway, Jack yanked her back.
Hey, what the?
Be quiet. Most Japanese castles have a bunch of mats known as tatami. I've seen it before. If this is supposed to be like a real Japanese temple, then this might have a trap. Follow me and be careful.
Maria was confused at how he could have known that. Jack silently thanked himself for taking a long weekend while in Okinawa with the Marines to see the castles in Kyoto, Japan, with the tour group. He still hated tour groups, though. Sneaking around for ancient artifacts was a much better deal. Basically, a nightingale floor has areas where, if stepped on, creates an abnormally loud creaking sound due to two pieces of metal rubbing together underneath the floorboard. Jack thought that the Japanese would surely have made an intricate system that detected the sound, and he didn't want to know what would have happened. Jack got down on the floor, gently gliding his hand over the floor. If he found a creak, he would call it out to Maria, who was ordered to follow his every move. They moved as slowly and quietly as they could. As hard as they tried, the squeaks of the floorboard catalyzed more movement from behind the walls. Jack couldn't guess what would happen if the noise was too much. All he could do was pray that he didn't experience what would happen. As they reached the end of the hallway, the wood floor turned to stone right before the heavy metal latch. Jack and Maria stood up carefully as to not set off the trap behind them. Jack grasped the handle of the door and gently unlocked it. As he moved the door away, Maria walked inside. Jack quickly followed her in, but she stopped short of the door. Maria and Jack were both shocked to see what was inside. Dozens of decaying carcasses were piled against the door. The uniforms and clothes signified that they were both Imperial Army and peasant workers who probably built the bunker. On the other side of the door were scratch marks and long-dried blood. Both Maria and Jack deduced that they were sealed inside to protect the secret of the gold. Yet, with the scratch marks and blood, there must have been something inside that panicked them. Jack and Maria made their way carefully over the bodies. Due to the lack of oxygen in the room, their flesh was still decaying, giving a putrid smell in the air. Jack moved to one of the boxes. He gave a firm kick to the top of the box, and it came right off. Inside were gold bullions imprinted with the seal of Imperial Japan.
Holy shit, we did it.
Jack said, looking with adoration into Maria's eyes.
Well, you do make a great partner after all, Jarhead.
Maria teased. She still worried about her mission to find Trishula and continued to search the room. If it wasn't for the decaying corpses, Jack would have felt that the moment was right. He could imagine going in for a kiss as he looked at Maria explore the room.
Wait, what's this?
Maria dashed away from Jack. On the other side of the room, opposite from the pile of bodies, lay a lone, dead Imperial soldier.
There's a hole in his skull, yet we didn't see any weapons on the others.
Maria continued to investigate. In the soldier's hands lay a crumbled-up journal entry. Maria took it from the body and examined it.
Do you know what it says?
I don't know yet, but we can take this back to base camp. Have you found anything with Hindu descent?
Jack looked around, but all he saw or cared about was the boxes of pure gold held within the room.
No, nothing creepy here, but I think we're set for life.
Jack said in reference to the millions of dollars of gold in stacked boxes around him.
Very funny. But this must be returned to the governments of those who suffered under the Imperials for reparations.
Maria argued. Jack rolled his eyes jokingly. He knew what his mission was. But was anyone going to miss a single brick of gold in a room filled to the top with the stuff? Moving around the boxes and dead bodies, he let the 2-point sling of his rifle drop around his chest as he continued to kick more boxes open. However, when he was at the end of what seemed to be his mission, he got careless. Jack Carter felt the tile depress into the floor under his feet. As soon as Jack took his foot off of the tile, the pair noticed an opening of ventilation shafts from the sides of the room. They couldn't see much, but Jack and Maria heard the release of pressure from the vents. Jack figured that something was being pumped into the chamber, but couldn't figure out what.
Why does it smell like bitter almonds?
Jack struggled to recall, but he felt dizzy, and his vision was blurring. Then he realized.
It's cyanide. We need to get out of here.
Jack ordered. Maria tucked the paper into her pocket, and the two dashed out of the room, tripping and falling onto the creaky hallway. Under the Nightingale floor was a mechanism that hooked up to the Japanese Type 92 heavy machine guns on the other side of the wall. Seconds after the creaks were initiated, machine gun fire rippled through the wood of the walls. Jack and Maria darted out of the hallway as more and more gunfire destroyed the wooden panels after them. Upon escaping the underground temple, the two realized that the heavy large doors on the other side of the cave were starting to close again. They made it through the doors before they were trapped inside with the poisonous cyanide. Jack and Maria paused to take a breath.
Shit, that was close.
Maria claimed, starting to break into a laugh with Jack. The smiles were quickly taken away when they realized the command room also had vents that opened.
Looks like you spoke too soon.
Jack replied, as they both continued to sprint out of the room. They reached the edge of the pit without hesitation. Maria leaped for the vine that Jack had used before and swung back to the other side. The vine broke as soon as she got to the other side, meaning he would have to find another way around. He had no choice. He would have to attempt the wall run. Jack grabbed the running start. Luckily for him, the walls were still covered with vines to act as temporary footholds. It made it easier for someone attempting something as intricate as a wall run to complete. He placed the first foot, then the second, perfectly to generate enough lift to get him to the edge of the pit, crashing right next to Maria. Maria helped him up. The two ran back to the hole they had crawled through.
Go!
Jack yelled in desperation as he cupped his hands to let Maria go through the hole first. When she got through, it was Jack's turn. The pungent smell of almonds was increasing, meaning the gas was seeping out to fill the entire bunker. Jack scurried into the hole. The fumes were making him dizzy and weak. Every movement was a battle to get to the light and its fresh air. If he fell asleep here, though, he would be done forever. As he saw Maria get through, he felt relieved that she was okay. But the effects of the poisonous gas were getting to him. He fought with every muscle in his body to get through the hole, yet his body ached to give up. He reached into his shirt to pull out the cross Andiri had given him. If he needed divine strength at any point, this was the time. He continued to crawl through the increasingly airless burrow, with the cross tightly held in his hand. Jack's head flared with intense pain. His movements were slow, and his body had become lethargic. All he could do was move and think,
I am not going to die here.
He crawled far enough to get his arm outside of the hole, but the exposure to the gas was too much. His eyes started to weigh heavily, and his body had given up on him. His face hit the dirt at the edge of the hole. The dirt slid across his face as he felt someone grab his arm from outside of the hole. It was too strong of a grip to be Maria's. As the fresh air poured into his lungs, he gently returned to consciousness. He felt someone's fingers on his neck and then his wrist, checking for a pulse.
His radio is weak and thready. Let's take him back to put in some O2 and an IV.
Jack recognized Carlos's voice. Jack's eyes open, but his body was too weak. He could see, while blurry, a large grouping of archaeologists crowding around him, with contractors pulling security around the area. Once he felt Carlos and Sal load him onto a stretcher, he passed out again.
Thank you so much for listening. My name is J.C.Albaugh, and I'm the author of Legend of Yamashita's Treasure. If you like what you heard and you want to read more, we've provided links in the description for you to get yourself an ebook copy, now available on Amazon and Apple.